All right. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the American Academy of Emergency Medicine, Women in Emergency Medicine section. This is a virtual mentoring series for osteopathic medical students. Thanks for joining us. My name is Caroline Twom, and I'm a third year at PCOM in South Georgia, and I'll be moderating tonight's session. And I would like to review a few housekeeping items before we get started. So just so you know, today's session will be recorded and it's going to be uploaded to AAEM WIEM's website within 24 hours. And tonight's session is meant to be interactive, so please use the Q&A function if you would like to ask a question or if you'd like to comment or anything. We welcome and encourage your participation. Does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay, good. All right, so please take a moment just to tell us where you're from in the chat box. You can send in a welcome message, your city and your state, and just let us get to know you a little bit. And today I have the privilege to introduce our panelists. So panelists, we can start with anybody. You can just introduce yourself, state where you're at in your medical journey, what med school you went to, and what you like to do for fun.
I can go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Alaika Fernandez. I am a PGY1 at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. I went to medical school in Kansas City University. I don't have much free time as an intern, but when I do have free time, I'm usually cooking or at a brewery with my husband and my dog, Gambino. He's a golden doodle.
I'll go next. So hello, everyone. My name is Saida Morgan. I know it says that I'm a DO. I appreciate the good vibes, but I'm actually an OMS-III. Sorry, my dog is barking. And I'm currently at Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in Swanee. And again, I'm a fourth year and I'm applying for EM residency. And in my spare time, I like to hike and I like to make YouTube videos and do hair and makeup.
Hi, everyone. I am Christina Wicca. I went to medical school at University of Pikeville, Kentucky College of Osteopathic Medicine. I completed my residency and just graduated this past summer at Adena Regional Medical Center in Chillicothe. So now I am working with Mayo Clinic in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and so far really enjoying my first year out. And I also love hiking and traveling and baking, hanging out with family and friends.
Hey guys, my name is Shanna Ross. So I am originally from the Colorado, Wyoming area. That's where I did undergrad and grad school. I actually went to medical school at Western University in Southern California, not the Lebanon campus. And then I did my residency at the University of Illinois, and I've actually been there ever since. I'm currently functioning as the Associate Program Director, Simulation Director, and the Director of Academic Programs. So welcome, everyone. In my free time, I have a dog that is currently biting me right now, so I apologize. He's real angsty. But also I really enjoy woodworking, and so I've purchased like 3 different types of saws in the last 6 months, and it terrifies my husband because he's worried I'm going to destroy the home, but that's okay. We can always pay somebody to fix it.
All right, was that everyone? All right, good. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and just start off with questions. I have a few questions, but again, feel free to ask any questions throughout. So the first question, I don't know what happened with the slides, but do you guys see the slides anymore or are they gone? No, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Fine, this will be good. You don't need to show the slide.
All right, so the first question I have for y'all is, what did you do to prepare for an upcoming rotation? And what are some things you did while on the rotation to supplement your learning?
I guess it was not so long ago that I was a medical student. But throughout my third and fourth year, I used Online MedEd. That was a really great resource, free resource. And I did questions as well, like just a question bank. I didn't use UWorld until it was time for dedicated. But specifically, if we're talking about emergency medicine, I used podcasts. There's a lot of podcasts out there and a lot of FOMED, free open access EM educational materials. That's really what I use to prepare myself. But really, if you get in the right mindset and you know that you're there to learn, regardless of what specialty you're going to be in, you'll be set. Because even if you're in OB, you're going to learn something that you're going to need to know when you're an ER doctor. So just go in with an open mind, and that's like your key to success.
Yeah, actually, I'm in my family medicine rotation right now, and a resident told me about the podcast Core EM. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but yeah. Well, sorry, you can go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I know for like a lot of my rotations, I did do a lot of questions too. I did a lot of question banks. So I did use UWorld. I mean, I'm still on rotation, but technically, no more COMATs, thank God. But I did a lot of like question banks. And then one thing that I did that was really helpful, like especially like on my EM rotations, after every time that I saw something or learned something new, I would go home and read about it so that it was like solidified in my mind, because it's like, okay, I saw it clinically and now I learned about it, so let me read about it to like have that whole picture in my mind. So that was something that I found that to be really helpful. And like now, like there are just certain things that are easily for me to, I don't want to say remember, but easily for me to like, I guess remember in a way, because I saw it and then I read about it. So I think that's super helpful, especially for EM.
That's an awesome strategy, because if you just carry that forward into residency, you retain so much information.
I'm glad it's not in vain.
I am probably the oldest person on this mentorship talk. So, to be fair, there was still FOMED when I was rotating, guys. That's like, podcasts and the rest of that. So I'm not that old, but I do think from a program leadership standpoint, right, like there is some basic things that we do expect all medical students to kind of know about any emergency medicine, right? Like we've got our big, essentially 6, right? That's the trauma, cardiac, GI, right? We've got our peds, we've got our neuro, and we've got our respiratory. And so if you can dive a little bit into those, right? Like if you're a podcaster, right? Like those other ones like EM Basic, the C3 series on MRAP, which I think you guys might get a discounted rate on MRAP, or it might actually be free for students through AAEM. Actually, it was when I was way back then, but who knows now, everything's much more expensive. But right, like, or if it's just reading or whatever it is, to know those core things, you don't have to know everything. That's my job, right? My job as a teacher and as an educator is to teach you those things, but you got to know a little bit, because then that shows me that you're dedicated, that you want to learn, and you're proactive, right? You don't have to be smart, just proactive.
That's great advice. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so next question I have is, when is the best time to ask for a letter of recommendation? After the rotation or later on in the year when you've decided on a specialty?
This is tough, because especially when you vibe with someone really early. So for example, OBGYN was one of my first rotations in third year, and I felt like I did a really good job, and the surgeon I was with was awesome, and we worked really well together. And I knew I wanted to ask her for a letter of recommendation, but it was like September. So essentially I put it in her head that I may ask her later on. And then when it came time, I like kept in touch with her either through email or texting. And she eventually, I did ask her for a letter of recommendation. And so it like plant the seed in their mind. But you definitely don't want to ask too late. Like I don't think there's such a thing as too early, but there's definitely such a thing as too late. So plant the seed early, and just, would you be interested? Hey, I had a really great time on this rotation. Would you be interested, if you have some time, to write me a letter of recommendation down in the future? Here is a potential timeline, and as long as you're respectful of their time, because, physicians are very busy, especially attending physicians, be respectful of their time and give them ample notice of when things are due, and really spell out exactly what they need to do to submit that letter of recommendation. I think that you're golden.
I'm gonna say I agree completely with Dr. Fernandez. It's never too early. I much prefer when a third year who's rotating in our PZR or wherever is like, can I get a letter from you in October, when I'm not worrying about writing my resident letters, right? Because they're trying to get jobs, fellowship letters, attending tenure letters, right? Because we still write letters for co-attendings and things like that. So we are writing letters year round. If all of you guys bombard me in April, I'm going to do 3. If you ask me in September or October, I'm going to write that letter. And the nice thing is you can have it submitted to your school, right? You can have it sent off to them. You provide the envelope or whatever the method is. It doesn't have to go to ARIS because you don't have a file, but just send it to the school and your school can upload it. But then the nice thing is if, let's say, you decide on a specialty, because I'll write a generic one. I don't know what you're going into, right? Like, you don't know what you're going into. But then if you email me back and say, you know what, Dr. Ross, thank you for writing me that letter. I've actually decided in ophthalmology. I can now take that letter and edit it for that field instead of having to write a whole new letter and trying to remember, wait, why did I like you on that rotation? Why were you so good? And so I highly recommend it. And even if you get a ton of generic letters, that's okay, right? Like, they'll be good for any specialty. That's a really great thing. And especially if you go into EM, I'll be honest, no one really cares about those other off service letters anyways, but right, like, it's okay to get them early. I had one resident who had 12 letters from their third year, and that was okay. Did they use all 12? No, because you get 4 spots, but they had ample picking. So just ask. If you thought like she said, if you did well, you jive with them, you think they're going to write you a good letter, just ask. It won't hurt. The worst thing they're going to say is no. And then guess what? On your next rotation, you're going to ask the next person, and it's okay.
Also, you should keep an eye out for the other things aside from applying to residency that might require a letter of recommendation, because I got scholarships because I asked for a letter of recommendation and I already had one on file. And these scholarships just kind of pop up out of nowhere. Like, you just come across them and like, oh gosh, it's due in 2 weeks. I need a letter of rec. Well, fortunately, I actually had another letter of rec that I already had on board, and I just said, hey, I know this was for this thing, but now I need it for a scholarship. And, they're more than happy to write you so you can get some free money. So keep that in mind. It's not just for residency applications. There are other things that you might need a letter of recommendation for.
That was great. Thank you. All right. Next question. If any of you honored a rotation, what do you think made you stand out?
I think one of the things that, like, just learning through going through like third year and then like half of fourth year, I think the thing that made me stand out the most, other than being hardworking, because like most students are hardworking, but I think a lot of it was just being like authentic and transparent. Like, I think that, like when you actually get to know like the physician that you're working with, and you're personable and you're fun and you're engaging, I think that kind of makes you stand out in a bit. And I think that's kind of what, at least from like most of the feedback that I have gotten from the rotations that I have honored. I'm sorry, guys, my dog is playing with his toy. basically that's kind of like what I've gotten. Like, you know, you were authentic, you were nice to be around, you were personable. And I think that's kind of what is one of the most important things just from feedback, because again, like most of the people in medicine are smart, you know, we're all ambitious, but like what's different about you? Like, who are you? You know? So I would say that would be one of the most important factors in like how you stand out in honor rotation, and be enthusiastic about learning.
My school was strange, and it didn't matter what your preceptor thought of you. It just depended on your shelf score, which was terrible. But I am interested to hear what Dr. Ross has to say about how to get a good letter of rec, since she's an APD.
Oh yeah, how to get that like coveted honors, right? Like though that's what you guys all want. So I referred to this a couple sessions back, and it's still my favorite thing in the world, because it's what I live by. But if you type into Google, and I'm never good at doing the Google chat on here and like dropping in the photo and all that stuff, but there are 10 things that require 0 talent for you to be successful in life. Just Google it right now, click images, and then scroll down to the one that looks like it was written on a whiteboard. So that's the best one, right? Like all the ones that were actually written on a whiteboard. Essentially what it is be on time. I cannot stress this enough. If I show up before my student or my resident, you're instantly, and I hate saying this because it's probably not true, but if you're late, which you're not, right? Like, because I show up 15 minutes early, but if you didn't beat me in, then you're probably lazy because I'm busier. Your only job is to look good on this rotation. That's your only job. And if I beat you on there, probably not going to work out. Work ethic is the number 2 thing, right? It's about being authentic, like student Dr. Morgan said, right? It's not about being the kiss ass, like overeager, like turn around and I bump into you kind of thing. It's about having a good work ethic. Remember why you guys went into medical school, right? Think of all your pre-med friends that would like shoot you in the foot to steal they would not shoot you in the head or kill you, right? Because they want to be a doctor and they want to help people, but they would definitely take off your little toe to trade spots with you. You guys did this for your patients. You wanted to help people. Put that work ethic in there, right? Then there's all the other things like energy, attitude, body language, right? Like essentially at the end of the day, I was joking Dr. Wicca about this, like the only rule in my house is like, don't be a dick. And I'm telling my dog that right now because he's biting my foot. Like we have one rule in this house, don't be a dick, right? It's the same thing. Don't do that. Be kind, be nice, be personable. You don't have to be a kiss ass. You don't have to be smiling all the time, right? I hate when people say smiling, but you have to be approachable, right? Because you don't want to scare your patients away. You don't want to scare other people away. Be coachable, right? Don't argue on shift, like in any rotation. And it sounds silly, and like all of your guys' faces like bugged out when I just said that. And that tells me you've never argued on your shift, which is why you're as successful as you have. But when I try and tell a student like, oh, well, you know, I would actually consider this because of this. And they're like, well, but what about this? And like, they start, you know, like, because they don't want to be wrong. I know you guys aren't trying to be jerks about it, but when you start trying to prove your intelligence to somebody who's board certified in that specialty, right? Like there's ways to go about that, being like, you know, that's really interesting. I had read in this study. What do you feel about that? So there's ways to do it. But when you start getting that rebuttal, you're not coachable at that point. And then you're just like, again, a dick, right? Like I curse on these. I'm so sorry. AAEM, they still invite me back. I don't know why. But like, if you do those things, you will do well. And for those of you who are listening, you are probably going, okay, I do all of those things. I literally had a student that I was trying to coach through. They had gotten a bad slow at an outstate institution. I was trying to, and they're like, I do all of those. I do all of those things. I was like, oh, see, you're arguing with me right now. And then look on their face, they're, oh God, right? Like, so you either get this list or you don't. And if you're like, I do all of those things all the time and I'm great at them, right? I'm sorry, I can't help you get an honors. I don't know how to help you. You have to be you need some like meditation time and self-reflection. But for those of you who are like, oh yeah, this looks a good list, do these things, you will do well. Like I said, you don't have to be smart. The whole point is for you to be dumb so I can teach you things, right? That's the whole point of residency, is like, right? Like I get paid to teach you things. You don't have to be that, but you have to be teachable.
Yeah, I think that's such a big thing, being teachable and coachable. You don't have to be the smartest person going in, and you don't have to know everything about emergency medicine going into, these rotations. The ones who are asking questions, very engaging, enthusiastic, show a lot more than somebody who's just sitting there and I have to like ask them to do things or tell them to do things. If you're somebody who's constantly seeing patients, following up on the patient, hey, this patient states that, their pain is so much better after we gave them that medication, and following up on labs, and offering, some of their opinions. I think that shows a lot as well when you're running around the department, doing anything and everything, trying to help out, and following up on the patients themselves. And I think that's also really big as well. And being nice to everyone, not just being personable and nice to your attendings and the residents that you're working with, but also the other staff and the other team, because this is such a team sport. Your nurses, the techs, everyone, because they also have a say, and they if they don't like somebody or had a bad experience with somebody, they'll bring that up too. So be nice to everybody as well.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest compliment I think one of my residents ever got, he was a medical student that we like actively recruited to come to our institution, was when a clerk, right, the secretary in the ED, and a housekeeper came up to me and they said, hey, Dr. Ross, we want this student here, right? And I was like, you're done. This kid's ours, right? Like, he's ours. We're taking him, right? And he's here and he's killing it in life, and he's got the dream job when he graduates next year, right? Like, these are the things, like, you want that. I have never read my slows because they're like in a lockbox. You'll never read yours. I'm so sorry to everyone out there. You'll never get them. But like, I know I got one interview because they mentioned that I knew the nurse's name. Like, it was mentioned, they're like, we weren't gonna actually interview. You had meh scores. You did well on your rotations, but your scores were just meh until we read that line. Why did the nurse know your name? And that was like a literally 10-minute talking point, right? It's those people, that's that genuine authenticity, right? It's not like the I'm here to kiss ass and I'm just going to rub noses with the important people. It's that you actually care about everyone in that room.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next question I have for y'all is, okay, were there any resources or strategies you used that made a difficult rotation easier?
Like I said previously, I literally went through every single rotation thinking about how the things that are terrible could be helpful one day as an ER doctor. So like, for example, dealing with personalities is my job. It's what I do every single day. I have to show up and be kind and be nice and deal with everyone's worst day of their life and everyone else's attitude. It is a skill. It is a skill, and you should learn it on the rotations that we all know but will not mention are terrible. You'll learn. It's probably, there's the medicine to learn, but this is a skill that you just have to get good at so that you don't burn out.
All right. Thank you. Next question. What's the next question? Is there anything you wish you could have done differently on rotations, your approach, the way you studied, etc.?
I'm trying to think. Online med ed was amazing. I like took notes, and instead of using first aid during which I used for step 1 studying, which was I only used because everyone else was using it and I wish I had never done that. I actually used online med ed and made and like drew everything out on a sketchbook, and I used that as my study tool for while I was studying for step 2. And I have OB-GYN coming up in the spring, and I already know I'm going to go back and use those notes again. So I don't really know what I can tell you, but if you can just figure out a way to carry forward all the high yield things that you might forget later on, but you might need, especially when you have to study for level 3, do that. Because like everything you learn is cumulative. You're going to need it at some point.
Good point. Thank you. Okay, next question. Any advice on how to overcome shyness and be more confident? This is something that I personally struggle with.
Guys, can I tell you? Like, I'm going to anyways. So I one of the quietest and shyest peoples in my entire high school. Like literally forgotten in the back of a car once because they were supposed to drive me home, but forgot I was in the back of the car because I was so quiet, and like went to their house and they're like, oh my God, Shanna, you're in the back of the car. We got to take you home. I'm so sorry. Like that's how quiet and shy I was. In college, I failed public speaking, not because I cursed too much, because I was too quiet and too shy, right? So I am not a great public speaker, but I do speak nationally multiple times a year. I am getting a master's in health professionals education. And now I have no filter at all. So maybe I swung too much the other way. But what I am trying to get a point across is there is no thing in this world that is inherent other than the fact that I've got curly hair, but like nothing in this world is you're born with it. Oh, they were born to be an educator. Oh, they were born to be a public speaker. Oh, they were born so confident. Maybe there's a couple really blessed people out there like that, but most of us, it's deliberate practice, right? So if you're quiet and you're shy and you were timid AF like me, right? You have to make a point to make yourself not timid. Whether that means when you go to Starbucks, you say, I'm going to introduce myself and say hi to one person in there and do small talk, even as awful as that sounds, to get used to it, right? Everything you do, every experience you have is an opportunity to be better, and just be very, very deliberate about it. Because otherwise, if you don't practice, when it's game time and you're on that audition rotation, like the M3s out there, right? Like you've got time for that audition rotation, right? So practice this on, if you want to go into surgery, practice in EM being more confident. If you want to go into EM, which I'm assuming most of you are because you're here tonight, right? Like practice on those other rotations to try your best, whether that's with the patient, with a nurse, with the tech, right? With somebody random, you just walk through the hall, smile, say, hi, how is your day going today? And then when you see them kind of mirror back that confidence, right? They're like, oh, hey, how's it going? It builds your own confidence, and then it becomes more natural over time. But no one's born with it. It's all Maybelline.
Completely agree. I was definitely always super shy, didn't like talking to people. I think it's always doing those things that make you feel comfortable, and over time you're just going to start, it's going to start becoming natural, and just putting yourself out there. And I think definitely throughout rotations, I felt my comfort and confidence. Felt like I could start talking to people and connecting. So I think just doing those uncomfortable things and just pushing yourself, and it's going to get there. The other thing too, I think would be helpful that I started doing, especially on rotations, is asking for feedback. And just starting to get that feedback. Okay, what can I work on? What else can I do to get to that next level? And over time, I think that also helped with just getting myself out there, and just getting better with all of that too.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Ross and Dr. Wicca. Like, I am extremely shy. I'm not as shy anymore. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact, kind of like what Dr. Ross was saying, like I would literally say, okay, when I walk in today, I'm going to say hi to either, like it was EM, so either like the person that was greeting, I was like, I'm going to say good morning. even though, like I'm pretty shy. When I walk into clinic, I'm like, nope, I'm going to say good morning to the MAs, to anybody. And then when you start being intentional and making like those small changes every day, and then you just keep adding. So then my next step was like, nope, whenever we have like didactics, I'm going to raise my hand and ask like one question. And then like you'll be surprised how that like those little changes every day, kind of builds that confidence, and then you become less shy and then more reassured of yourself. So I think one of the best ways, kind of like what everybody else was saying, is to like do something small each day and then just build upon that. Like start with bricks, not with the house, which is hard because we all want to start with the house, but definitely bricks. And then I think, you'll notice a huge improvement.
Thank you. That was great advice, everyone. Okay, my next question was, what did you do to build relationships with those with others around you? But I think you guys kind of answered that with that last question. So what are some tips to make the most out of the rotation and to stay engaged?
I am down to do anything. If you ask me to do something, I'm going to do it. Even now in residency, they're like, do you want to do this thing? I was like, I've never done it. I'm happy to YouTube it very quickly. And if you walk me through it, I'm more than happy to do it. If you place yourself in uncomfortable situations, not like unsafe, that's different. Unsafe and uncomfortable are two different things. But if you place yourself in uncomfortable situations, there's only room for growth, because that's how you learn and that's how you challenge yourself. And I've been doing that from the very start. Anytime something made me uncomfortable, I went to go do it, because at some point you are going to have to do it and you're going to have to be good at doing it. So you might as well start early, especially as a medical student, because you have so many eyes like watching you and helping you. And so if you start now, it's only going to make you a better physician one day.
Yeah, I think just being proactive, going out there, seeing patients, following up on them. If a nurse is putting in a Foley catheter, hey, can I help you out with that? And can I do that as well? See all the procedures, and hey, maybe if you saw like somebody suturing up a couple of times, and then they'll be like, it's your turn to do the next one, or even with more complex procedures. Just being very proactive that way, instead of just sitting around. I think another good thing is throughout your rotation, come up with some goals. Hey, I'm really interested in this. Can we talk about this? Or if we see that patient, come up with goals, what you want to do or accomplish throughout that day. I think that'll help also keep you engaged. There's so much to see, so much to learn, especially in emergency medicine, that it's really hard to get bored. As long as you just show your interest and stay engaged and enthusiastic, I think you're gonna have fun and enjoy it. Yeah.
I want to echo something Dr. Wicca just said really quickly. I got really tired of people telling me you're doing great when I asked for feedback. I was like, this is not useful. It's not useful. So I wound up specifically telling them, this is what I'm working on today. So that way, at the end of every shift, they could give me feedback on the thing I asked to work on. And I still do that. I do that as an intern now. I say, I want to go see every stroke patient that comes in. And then I go see them, and then I get feedback specifically on that thing, plus other things. So I wish I had known that as a third year. No one had told me that when I was a third year. So I wish I had known that earlier, because I wouldn't have gotten tired of that. You're doing great feedback. It's not useful. Unless you are doing great, which is great. It's not useful.
Not useful. Still not useful. I think the second half of the question was like, how do you make a rotation more bearable, right? Like, and I think once you are more engaged and more involved, everything is a lot more bearable. But and this is maybe the old curmudgeon in me, but medical school, you guys get 2 years of clinicals, and then you're in your residency. 2 years is not a long time, okay, right? And we have lots of talks about APRNs and mid-level education, right? But if you are lazy and you don't care to learn on that rotation, you are no better than a mid-level, and you will probably be that way as a resident, right? Because you're not engaged and you're not learning. You should go into every rotation like you're going to do that rotation, that residency for the rest of your life, because that's your only chance you're going to get that potentially, right? Let's say you change your mind and you don't want to do emergency medicine and you want to do urology, but your patients are going to have other things when they come to you, right? And especially in ER, like they're going to bring up, like Alpert syndrome. But if you didn't pay attention during your Peds genetics rotation, like you're not going to know that Alpert syndrome has mid-phase cranial abnormalities and that they have difficulty breathing and all these crazy things, right, that are going to impact their care. So go into everything, have that passion, right? And if you can't fake it for 4 weeks, Lord help you, right? It's 4 weeks. Anyone can do anything for 4 weeks. You all stuck inside during the pandemic for a very long time. That was longer than 4 weeks. You can do this. Trust me. I believe in you all.
Okay, so that's all the questions that I have. So Katie or Mark, if you guys have any questions at all, you can go ahead and put them in the chat box. If not, wait for a second. But
One thing I will say, something that was told to me when I was a third year that I thought was very, very helpful, an M3, not like a third year resident, but an M3 that was very helpful for getting letters, was to ask the person, the preceptor that's going to be writing that letter, say, what are you looking for in a student, right? So it's never good to go into, I mean, you have your own goals and expectations, but so do they. It's kind of like when you go into emergency medicine and there's the standard letter of evaluation. It's not a recommendation letter anymore. It is an evaluation letter. So it could actually bomb you, right? And so they're looking for certain things. And if you don't know what's in those things that they're looking for, how do you know how to do well? It's like going into a test and not knowing what they're going to test you on, right? So as you go into your rotations, if you get a chance on that first day, second day, first week, even in those didactics, just talk to them and say, what are you looking for in a student? How can I be successful in this? What is the measure of success for you as an attending, right? And then you actually have tangible things to work on. And that shows initiative, right? You can actually work on those things and they'll probably like you more because you're probably doing the things that they're actually looking for. So they're not going to think poorly of you regardless. So it's always good to know what you're getting yourself into. Do the same thing for your EM rotation. If you've never seen what a slow, Google it, read what we mark you down on. What are those 7 things that we have to say? Are you at your peers, above your peers, below your peers, right? You don't want to be below your peers in anything. So know what those things are, and that'll be helpful in your career. And that goes on just through attending hood, right? Like you got to know what your bosses expect from you. Otherwise you can't be successful.
If I could piggyback off of something that Dr. Ross said, here's my puppy again. I know when I did my EM audition rotation, I guess this is kind of like, it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but sometimes you don't actually get to rotate with the actual PD. And your PDs are usually the ones that write your slows. So I was kind of intentional about actually having a actual rotation with my PD and actually, doing pretty well on it, because that could go good or bad. So I think that could be something that's extremely important, especially if you are doing your EM rotation. Try to get to know your PD, or at least, interact with them, be personable with them, show them that you're hardworking, because that could definitely make or break you.
Absolutely. And slows now are all composite, which means they're group slows. So it's more than just the PD. It's the clerkship director, it's the APDs, right? And usually it's one other core faculty member that's going to be writing that letter. So it's important. I always recommend you should at least meet with the PD at least once if you're on those rotations, right? If you can get a rotation or an actual shift with them, even better. But if you can't, don't worry. They still will hear the other things. So it's really important to be on your A game, no matter where you are in the hospital or where you are in shift. I will never forget, we do these PD horror stories at court every year, which is the Council of Residency Directors, and seeing a med student interacting with a patient outside the hospital lobby and that negative interaction and how demeaning they were, but come inside and be like, oh, I care so much about the understanding. Like, oh, right. Like, and I was like, you're done. One, you're a liar. Two, you're a dick. You already broke the 2 rules in house. Right. But it's just, we're watching you all the time. Somebody's watching you all the time. Right. This is your professional identity. I know you guys all get like crappy classes in med school on professional identity, but it's so important that when you are on that medical campus, you are always professional and that you're always on your A game. And it's stressful. It sucks to be that way all the time, but that's what you have to be as a physician when you're an attending. You never get to let that down while you're on your job.
All right, I think that is it. I don't see any questions in the chat, and that's all that I have. So panelists, thank you so much for participating in this session. It was really helpful. And so Katie and Mark and others who are gonna watch this recording, we're always interested in your feedback. So please let us know what you thought about tonight's session. And you can email info@aaem.org. And also please join us for our next WIEM session in December. And to register for upcoming sessions, please visit the website and select the appropriate links. But other than that, thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Thank you.